Hello, sir. Sir, earlier it was believed that the women are discriminated. So when a lady ruled the kingdom, so did it make any change to the thought process of the people?
So that's what, as I mentioned, there were some cases where it did, but in a lot of other cases, it also evoked constant envy. They always made the life of the woman very difficult. It was not as much of an easy, smooth sail as if she had been a man. So all the women who have been featured in this book too, if you read their stories, they came up and held their power with a lot of effort. So that makes their story all the more, powerful, because not only did they have to be a brave heart to face external aggression, they also had to face a lot of internal dissent because people thought that she was not good enough. I mean, why go so far into the past? Even when an Indira Gandhi became a prime minister, we had people who said she is no good, she's a gungi gudiya, and all of that. Till later, a complete thing saying she is the only man in the cabinet, and all the others were just kowtowing to her. So it is very difficult. I think people don't take it. And Priyanka, as she said, even in leadership roles, it's not only power, but even in a corporate setup, even in to even listen to a woman boss, I don't know how many people would take it very lightly. So it's a more difficult task for the woman leader to actually prove her mettle and also ensure that the subordinates are in, listen to her. So it does take time to change that mindset. But in the past, as you see in these stories, there have been varied responses to that from the people.
Have Vikram Sampath. FRH is, I don't know how to say this, but I know that this is Fellow of Royal Historical Society. So he's an Indian historian who is noted for writing biographies of Gohar Khan and Vinayak Damodar Savarkar. After academic training in engineering, mathematics, and finance, Vikram Sampath worked in a bank. In 2008, he published a history of Vadiyar dynasty of Mysore, a childhood fascination. In 2012, he published a biography of Gohar Khan, which received critical acclaim and won the Yuva Puraskar in English literature from Sahitya Academy. The next year, Sampath published a biography of S. Balachandra, which also garnered positive reviews. In 2013, Sampath left his job from Hewlett Packard, HP, to begin a PhD in ethnomusicology and history at the University of Queensland, Australia. In 2019 and 2021, he wrote a two-part biography of Savarkar that received praise for its thorough detail, but was criticized for its uncritical treatment of the subject. In September 2012, Sampath was selected as a Fellow of the Royal Historical Society. So now we come to the moderator of the session. She's very well known in Nagpur, and she is Priyanka Kothari. She's a BTech and also a stay-at-home mom of two beautiful children. She's associated with CMCA and NGO teaching children's civic awareness program for the past 10 years. She's a part of Prabha Khaitan Foundation, an NGO that works for promotion of Indian art culture and literature, Indian and overseas. She takes creative writing and reading comprehension classes and English classes for boarding school entrances. Now, I would like all of you to welcome them to the stage with a huge round of applause, everyone. Priyanka, I request you to take the session forward.
Thanks, Arushi, and thanks, Vikram, for gracing VLF again. We are thoroughly thrilled to have you here. And let us just dive into our questions. Into my past question. My last conversation, my first question to you was why history? Probably this time you thought ये फिर से नहीं पूछ ले वो तो आपने प्रोलोग में ही कलहन का एक श्लोक लिखा है why history and why Indic history. So can you elaborate on that, and even if you would like to even recite the shlok for us.
Thank you. A very good afternoon. It's quite a time, 3:15 post lunch, to talk about history. I'm trying very hard to keep awake. So I hope I don't put you all to sleep. So that is the biggest challenge. We'll see at the end of the 1 hour. Before I get to that, Priyanka, and it's always a pleasure to be in Nagpur. And this is, I think, I don't remember which nth time I've come to the VLF and, of course, to the PKF events. Before I get to that question, I'll just give a brief about the idea behind this book itself, Brave Hearts of Bharat. It was a very casual conversation that I was having with my dear friend Sanjeev Sanyal in Delhi several moons ago. And while discussing, as history buffs and historians, both of us, we were just Sanjeev tossed this question that can you list the kind of wars that we as India and Indians have won? And can anyone here talk about or name one or two wars that we won, which we've learnt in school? One, okay. Bappa Raval, okay, I'm glad. Any? Huh? That's all. After reading my book, then I don't know. So on that evening, it was very difficult for both of us to come up with even 5 names of wars we had won. But then, very dutifully, our history books taught us, right from the Arab invasion of Sindh to the Battle of Tarain, Battle of Plassey, Battle of Buxar, Anglo-Mysore wars, Anglo-Maratha wars, Anglo-Sikh wars, a long laundry list of battles that we as India and Indians lost. Now, today, if we are the only pre Bronze Age era civilization that is still alive and kicking, there must have been some wars we won also. Some courage that our poor ancestors had put somewhere and put some amount of physical, pushback. Even, Muhammad Iqbal had said, "Kuch to hai ki hasti mitti nahi hamari." So, what is that kuch? Can we quantify that? Is it just the spiritual power of this nation, or is it also physical resistance, the kshatra spirit that we had and which has been emasculated out of us over several centuries and decades? And that left me deeply disturbed while we were talking about that. And that is when I thought, why don't we, make a list of who were some of these heroes and heroines, more importantly, heroines also, women who don't feature in this narrative of history, which becomes his story and her story does not come into the picture at all. And also a larger representation of India itself. If you're talking of Indian history, it need not be restricted only to that narrow strip in and around Delhi. The Delhi centricity of our history or the way we read it in our textbooks also is deeply disturbing. Where every, Tughlaq, Khilji, Lodhi, every detail about that we are forced to memorize by heart while growing up. But then vast parts of India don't even feature in that larger narrative of what Indian history is. South India, from where I come from, or even Maharashtra, the Rajput history, the Northeast does not feature at all. The Ahoms of Assam, who ruled for 600 long years, I don't know how many people would even know, or children studying history would even know or name one or two, Ahom rulers. Cholas who ruled for 1,000+ years, the Shatavahanas, Rashtrakutas, Pallavas, Gangas, Kadambas, the Wadeyars of Mysore, all of them are just dispensed away in our NCRT textbooks in a map saying this is where they ruled. And the current NCRT book, and sitting in Maharashtra and in Nagpur, even Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj is dispensed off in one photograph. So a young boy or girl who's reading history from the CBSE syllabus, his or her accessibility and knowledge to even someone like Chhatrapati Shivaji is just a photograph, 25% of a page with a caption below saying whose picture this was. So there were numerous such, distortions among several other distortions that Indian history and history writing has suffered from. And that conversation with Sanjeev that evening just provided this catalyst for me, saying, can we resurrect some of this sense of pride and glory about our past? Now, I take pains always to re-emphasize that there is a very thin line between pride and jingoism. chest thumping and saying everything about our past is great, our past was the best, we knew everything, the atom bomb to airplanes, and that is another extreme level of going to one limit. But the other part is also equally bad, where you're constantly made to feel apologetic about yourself, about your past, about your ancestors. Every negative aspect of your past is overemphasized, and the genuine achievements, which you can feel some sense of genuine pride about what you have bequeathed, that is not emphasized on. So Brave Hearts of Bharat came in that context, where, I mean, the number was very difficult. 15 is what I chose. 15 warriors, 8 of which are men, but 7 are women. And these come from all over. Thank you. And I'm glad the women in the room took the lead there. Thank you for that. And they come from every part of India. Kashmir, Lalita Ditya Mukta Pida from Kashmir, Rani Naiki Devi from Gujarat. And I don't know if some of you might have read the book, it's been more than a year. But before this, I'm not sure if these names even have a recall factor in many of your minds, at least the younger people who are there, the children who I don't think they study about these people in their history textbooks. Maharana Kumbha of Mewar, Rudramma Devi of Warangal, Rani Abbakka of Ullal in Karnataka, Martanda Varma from Kerala, Velu Nachiyar from Tamil Nadu, also Rajaraja Chola and Rajendra Chola from Tamil Nadu, Lachit Barphukan from Assam, the Ahom general, Banda Singh Bahadur from Punjab, Begum Hazrat Mahal, of course, from Awadh, Chand Bibi from in and around Ahmednagar, of course, and you had a very interesting ruler from Manipur called Rajarshi Bhagyachandra Jai Singh, who kind of also gave Manipur its name, brought the whole idea of Krishna Bhakti to Manipur, and so on. So these were some of the Kanhoji Angre, of course, the Maratha Sarkhel of the Maratha Navy, Admiral. So numerous such people whose stories unfortunately did not feature. And coming back, Priyanka, to your fundamental question, history writing has largely today in India been inspired by the Western model of what is a Rankian philosophy, the German historian von Ranke, who spoke about positivism or evidence-based history. Now it's a very difficult, it's of course a modern evidence-based history writing is essential, but it needs to intertwine with the Indic or the Indian way of looking at our past. And in that, there has been a very, very clear enunciation by probably one of our greatest chroniclers, who's Kalhana, who wrote the history of Kashmir in the Rajatarangini, the stream of the kings of Kashmir. And it's an unending history up to the 13th, 14th century with several addendums added to the Rajatarangini. And he very clearly states, Dharmartha Kama Mokshanam Upadesha Samanvitam Kathayuktam Puravrittam Itihasata Chakshmate. So what is history? What is its use? Some of us may ask. And Kalhana has the precise answer for that. Puravrittam, or narratives of the past, told to you in a Kathayuktam, in a form of a story, but which also have an Upadesha Samanvitam. There has to be a didactic element. There has to be a moral component of right and wrong to society, and which help us in the attainment of the 4 Purusharthas of Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. That is called Itihasa. Itihasata Chakshmate. And the word Itihasa itself, corresponding or translating as is in Sanskrit to it thus happened. Aisa hua tha. So, without prejudice, without fear, without any kind of contemporary biases that you have, documenting the incidents of the past as is, without fear or favor. I think that needs to be the utility of history, which our ancestors, it was a very unique Bharatiya concept of what history writing should be itself. So to get back to that is probably, small attempts are now being made by several people, and this is one such which, I've tried with Brave Hearts.
And you are a brave heart enough to do that and start this mission that you are on. But I would like to ask, like, is this Indic histology as fluid? Like, can it be like, can it reflect the contemporary can it be fluid enough, or is it evolving enough? Does it evolve the kind of the philosophy that can we do justice to all the four parts now once we write history now?
So, everything keeps evolving. Change is the only constant in life. So, I'm sure what Talhana wrote in the 12th century would not be completely relevant today. So, I'm not dismissing the Western model, which is looking at evidence-based research and historiography. But then I'm just trying to draw the attention also to a larger philosophical aspect of the problems that a historian needs to face. You see that an incident has happened 100 years or 1,000 years in the past. Now that information about that incident comes to us in the present through sources. Right, sources which could be multifarious, it could be epigraphic, it could be written sources, it could be coins, numismatic sources, inscriptions, whatever, or textual palm leaves and other sources. Now these sources have been compromised, they have been destroyed in the several centuries of invasions and all that has happened in this country. Some of these sources can come with their own biases. Now, most of the so if you're having a court historian writing about the Maharaja or the Sultan, obviously there'll be a lot of exaggeration in that account. So there is that bias of the source itself. Now, after passing through all these filters, that source is coming to a modern historian who comes with his or her own biases. Now, all of us have our biases, whether we like to accept it or not. There is some amount of ideological, political, whatever bias. So you come to the table with your biases. You also come to the table with your own inefficiencies. Now, suppose I can call myself a historian of ancient India and not know a word of Sanskrit, not know a word of Prakrit, Pali, Sen Tamil, and all these other classical languages in which the history of that time was written. My only window to the history of India is through the 200 years of British rule, English, which is probably a very small window of that, and I'm relying on Western translations of our texts, which can be biased themselves, which can be misrepresentative, and numerous other fault lines. In Vedic Sanskrit, one word can have 20 meanings depending on the context. A Westerner may not know that. It may be ignorance also. So the one truth that is there passes through the first filter of sources being compromised, incomplete, destroyed, and all of that. The second filter is the current modern historians' own, filters. After passing so many filters, the final substrate of that truth that will come out, you can imagine how little of the original that actually would be. So, while you talk of evolving or fluidity of that historiography, I think it's very important for a historian to say or acknowledge with humility that whatever he or she writes or has found out, that is not the absolute truth. They are seekers in this journey, very much in line with the Indian philosophy of neti neti, na iti na iti. This is not the end. It is just a means. So someone else does better research, finds new sources, then my entire hypothesis, how much ever well researched, how much ever well received, well written it may be, it can just be thrown in the dustbin because someone else has upstaged it. And that is the intellectual curiosity that this discipline gives. That humility, unfortunately, is not there. It's more of my way or the highway. I have found the absolute truth, and nothing else, matters. And that's the problem of ideologically driven, ideologically tainted, I think, history writing.
Yeah, that's I was coming to. Like, people are like they like, only the historians should be writing history. Now that you are an established historian yourself, now that you talk about it, do you think that because you have a base in engineering and sciences, does it make you a different historian? Make you write differently or think differently? Is it that is how your books are so different than the regular staunch historians?
I would like to believe so. I think science
No,
does
it's
give
a
you
fact. It
a
is a fact. It
yeah,
is
no,
like
science does give you a sense of analytical thinking, and I'm also had a master's in mathematics, so I think mathematics gives you a sense of logic. You would like to look at the logical aspects of what it holds, but there's also, it's not just dry facts, like Kalhana had mentioned, you also have to weave in the human angle, which is where the storytelling part of it comes. And there needs to be a message to society. So I think interweaving all of this becomes very important. But do remember, during the British times, some of the British historians who wrote and whose works we depend on, they were all engineers. They were surveyors who went and did surveys, civil engineers who went on surveys, and then they got so interested. They were also asked by the British government to catalogue and write details about the anthropology of the place, the customs of the place, and that's how a lot of history of the British times got written. None of them were JNU educated historians in any case. So this whole false equivalence that we are the dog in the manger, we will control the narrative, we will tell people, we will determine who is insider versus outsider. Those debates, I think, are meaningless in today's information age where information is freely accessible to everybody. You just need to know the tools and methods of assessing that information and making sense of it. It's not as if you're building a spaceship to NASA at all.
Yeah, it's a rocket science now. So, you made my, you answered my question already.
I
Like,
read
why?
your mind in advance.
Yes, this happens when you meet. Not that enough, but yes. So, but still, how after Savarkar, like voluminous 2 volumes on one single person, like 600 page each, and then 15 people in 300 pages. How difficult or how easy was it?
So in fact, my publishers, Penguin, they actually, I say they cheated me into it. My publisher said, after those voluminous books, let's have a quickie, a quick one which can be fast written and so on. And I fell for the trap. Later, I realized I think this was much tougher than Savarkar,
Yeah, because
only because of the breadth it covered. One is, as I mentioned, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Gujarat to Manipur and Assam, it had the entire length and breadth of the country. And it spanned from the 8th century till 1857. I chose 1857 as the cutoff date because the fights that we put after that would be termed as the larger freedom movement, and so that would not come into this rubric. So the span of time, the geography was so intense, and not necessarily in all cases was documented history available in the way in a Savarkar book it would be available. For instance, there was so a lot of oral history that was there, and in numerous Indian languages, not all of which necessarily I know personally. So to rely on a lot of help from language experts in Assam, for example, there are these Burunjis. Now Assam has the documented history that goes on for I think 600 700 years of the Ahom rule in what is known as the Burunjis. Now these, despite that, the Assamese history has not come out into the mainstream. In the case of the Cholas too in South India, every little detail was documented on temple walls. Our way of documenting history may have been different from what the West did, but if you go to the Brihadishwara temple, the big temple in Tanjavur, on the walls you had things like who were the 400 Devadasis who sang and danced in the wall in the temple, their names, their mothers' names, their addresses, their emoluments, all of that carved on the temple walls. And the Cholas left all their information in triplicates or quadruples. They would have it in Sanskrit, they would have it in Tamil, they would have it on palm leaf, the same information also on copper plates, so that if one gets destroyed, another thing holds. So documentation was done, but in a very different way. It was a very that's why the West never understood how these people documented their history, and so right from Al-Baruni, people always criticized us, saying the Hindus just don't know how to document their past. So it was very, very difficult that way, and a lot of oral narratives, oral stories. There was this story of this lady called Rani Abbakka, who I write in one of the chapters, a queen from Ullal. And actually, I realized later it was not one Abbakka, there were 4 Abbakkas, all of them by the same name, who ruled over different spans. The only commonality among all of them, other than their name, was they all defeated the Portuguese. Now, to have women who managed to destroy and defeat the Portuguese fleet at a time when the Portuguese were so powerful, that itself is a very fascinating story. But one source for that became very unexpected for me when, all of you must have seen this Kannada film Kantara, where there is this whole Bhuta Aradhana that is done in coastal Karnataka, and that's where Abbaka also comes from. And not only were gods and spirits and all of them invoked, a lot of historical characters too are invoked in this Bhuta Aradhana that is done. And I was fortunate enough to go to one such, performance of Bhuta Aradhana of Abbaka, where the performer, the practitioner, actually invoked her, and then all these stories get spoken about. Oh, she, since ammunition was not available locally, available coconuts that were there, it would be scooped out, and into that, the gunpowder would be put, and in the midst of the night, this is hurled at all the Portuguese fleet, and that is how the Portuguese ships catch fire. So this person on whom Abbaka's spirit is supposed to have come narrated the story in that performance, that this is how I killed the Portuguese and all of that. Now, of course, as a modern historian, to take that completely at face value without a cross verification, without the positivism of von Ranke, that would be difficult. So for that, there were other means to also cross verify or triangulate the findings. But this became such an interesting feature for me, that while university trained historians sitting in air conditioned rooms might have forgotten Abbaka, she still remains alive in that village in Ullal or in Mangalore, where people are venerating her. So who's won the long term battle here? Whose memory survives? Was it those about whom we read in our books, or those whose memories still live in folklore, in folk literature, and in everyday living, where they can actually associate with her in a more personalized way than probably most of the others whom we read in a very academic fashion with a very dispassionate distance from ourselves. So putting this rubric together, I think it was very, very interesting for me, and also in a way, I think I rediscovered India in a way, Bharat more to say, which speaks to us through her languages. Unless we get closer to the languages of India and use only English as a crutch, I don't think you get to the soul of this nation, which reverberates only through her languages and her dialects.
Wonderful. And you did talk out like the entire Bharat. You've taken all geography, all religion, all gender. So how did you select these people? Like I find a thread, but I want you to.
So one was, yeah, this gender balance had to be there. So as many women as men, and of course covering as many states. So as I said, all of Rajasthan, Gujarat, Maharashtra, the four South Indian states, from the northeast, Assam and Manipur, Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Kashmir, all of them covered. Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh. Of course, many got left out. I couldn't cover Odisha, West Bengal, and so on. And maybe a sequel to the book
Sequel.
might help in that.
Yeah,
This thing,
there
because
should be one.
there are as many heroes and heroines in as many places. So that was one feature. The other was, as I said, the battles that we won. Now, briefly, Lalitaditya of the Karkota dynasty of Kashmir of the 8th century, he was known as the second Samudragupta, and he was someone who ensured that among several others, the gentleman that spoke about Maharana Bappa Rawal, there were several others of that time, which included, Lalitaditya, who was a contemporary, Yashovarman of Kannauj. You had Vikramaditya, the Chalukyan ruler, Danti Durga, the Rashtrakuta ruler, who all formed alliances. And these people ensured that when the Arabs invaded Sindh, while Raja Dahar might have been killed, that too after 60 years of resistance that Sindh offered, the Arabs could not conquer much of India beyond that narrow strip of Sindh. They could have easily gone past that and occupied a lot more. So, and in fact, 50, 60 years after the passing away of the Prophet and the march of the Caliphate forces, almost the whole of the Middle East, Africa, and parts right from the Atlantic to the gates of India were Islamized. But in India, to establish the first Islamic Sultanate after Arab invasion in 712, it took the forces 500 years. So 1206, when the first Delhi Sultanate was established. So from 712 to 1206, our ancestors were pushing back. They were constantly defeating the Arab in waves and then the Turkic waves which came in. Now, who were those people and why are their names never told to us? We all know about Muhammad Ghazni, who came so many times and invaded and did what he did, but we will not be told who were the people who actually ensured that these people were pushed back. You had the Hindu Shahi rulers of Kabul and the western frontier who ensured that Muhammad Ghazni had a very difficult time while coming here. So their names are seldom told. Then there's also Rani Naiki Devi, who, being a woman and a regent queen of the Chalukya dynasty, defeated Muhammad Ghori in what is known as the Battle of Kasarhada in 1178. So much so that Ghori was so ashamed to be defeated by a woman that he never turned back to Gujarat again. He thought it's an easy prey because a woman is in power there, but he had to learn the hard way. Similarly, Maharana Kumbha, who remained an unvanquished ruler all his life, the Kumbhalgarh fort which he built is the second largest, longest wall after the Great Wall of China. And the Vijay's thumb that he established in Chittorgarh and other places was in commemoration of these victories that he scripted. Similarly, Abbaka, who I said defeated the Portuguese. And from Kerala, you had Martanda Varma, who was mentioned. It is so sad to know that Martanda Varma was the man who defeated the Dutch in the battle known as the Battle of Kolachal, and this was in 1741. Now, today also pop quiz when it is asked, maybe in KBC or wherever else, which was a chance where Asian powers destroyed a European power, they will probably talk about the Russo-Japanese War of 1905. That was when the Japanese defeated the Russians. But almost 200 years before that, you had Martanda Varma in this tiny little principality of what was then Travancore, which later expanded. He established it. He ensured that the Dutch East India Company was given a death blow. And by then, the Dutch were a very, very major power. They were the first to be listed on the global stock exchanges. Their access of power expanded from South Africa, going all the way to Middle East, Asia, then India, and also going all the way up to Japan. And they had great colonial ambitions in India as well. So, but for the Battle of Kolachal and the collapse of their pepper trade, India would well have been colonized by them. Now, any other country, statues of Martanda Varma would be there in, I think, every road square, and every child would be taught this Battle of Kolachal. But today, India, we will draw a blank. But Battle of Plassey, Battle of Buxar, all those long lists that that we are dinned into our head, saying, yeah, you are a nation of losers, you are a nation of no-gooders, your destiny, and this was the British project, the colonial project, right from Aryan invasion and all of that they taught to us about, that our destiny is to be ruled from people from the outside. People come from the outside, they give us a sense of civilization, education, language, our texts are written by them, and we, the British, are just a software update, a version 2.0 of that, old this thing, to justify their own, rule and capture here. But we continued with that even after independence, which is the sad part. So people like this, who become very, very important, and these landmarks. You had Lachit Barphukan, who, in what is known as the Battle of Sarai Ghat in 1671, manages to push back and defeat one of the largest imperial forces of Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb sends the hugest army that he had, I think, at that time under Raja Ram Singh of Jaipur. It was a classic case of the subaltern winning David and Goliath fight. These were rudimentary, techniques they had. They had bamboo, which was in abundance in the northeast, elephants, and the Brahmaputra river, through which they used it for their advantage in naval combats with the Mughal army. And in the Battle of Sarai Ghat, managed to push back Aurangzeb, Ram Singh's army, so much so that Assam remained unconquered. In fact, the very name Assam or Ahom also, it comes from this thing that Asama, or something that is unconquered. And generally in Assam language, sir and her are intermixed. So there's no sir, so every sir is pronounced as her. So Assam became a home. So the invincibility of Assam over centuries, where they never allowed their territory to be occupied, I think that was also such a important story. So Battle of Kolachal, Battle of Kasarhada, Battle of Sarai Ghat, these should also be taught. And I'm not saying we should not be taught about Battle of Panipat, Battle of Tarain, because we also need to know where we went wrong. History needs to give us that sense also. Not everything, as I said, about our past is great and everyone was great. We made grievous mistakes for which we paid the price over centuries. But then we also had positives, which can also serve as a sense of inspiration for us. So it's, I think, a mixed bag which we should look at rather than stressing only on the negative aspects.
Yeah, so I think I was right because as much as you, I mean, the thread, what I saw, and anybody of us would, is that this time we knew, I mean, the thread was the attackers. You covered all the attackers, but moved the spotlight to the
Yeah.
fighters.
Yeah.
Then, sadly, because all of us would know who all the attackers, Ghazni, Gori, da, 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 but these people we don't know. Sparsely, 4 or 5 people we would know. But thanks for you now that the spotlight is on them. Why Ahilya Bai Holkar though?
What a question to ask in Maharashtra, though.
I know, but I still, I mean, there was a fight which she did, which you would elaborate more on.
So I think while physical prowess is important, Ahilyabai Holkar and also Rajarshi Bhagya Chandra Jai Singh, whom I mentioned, of course, he at least had some. With the Burmese who were constantly attacking, he managed to push back several times and so on. But with Ahilyabai, of course, she had a little fight even with Raghunath Rao Raghoba, who tried to take over the kingdom after Malhar Rao Holkar dies, and everyone is aghast that a lady, and that to a widow, is actually coming to the throne to rule. That brief, bravado apart, I think what was important is this is not just physical prowess; it is also she was a civilizational hero. At a time when the country was going through such difficult times, for her to kind of civilizationally unite everyone through faith, the resurrection of various temples. We know only about Kashi Vishwanath or Somnath that she got rebuilt. But then all the 12 Jyotirlingas, all the Char Dhams, 7 Puris, the way she used her benign image to resurrect all these places of faith at a time when we were going through such difficult times politically, and use that soft power. We talked today about soft power, but for her to use that to also convince Muslim Nawabs of say Bhopal or Hyderabad to have temples erected in their domains, to bring water from the Ganga to Rameshwaram and so on, and so-called bring the north and south together. While today also we fight of a north-south divide. To be able to do this at that time in the 18th century for a woman, I think it was quite something. And an administrator par excellence, in leadership models and case studies, we only look at Western, case studies. But here was a woman who typified what good governance and good administration was. In her kingdom, forget human beings. There used to be food and water kept on the roadsides, even for birds, stray dogs, and cats and other animals. And she would say, as a ruler, I am like the mother for everybody. And that's why she was this Punya Shlok, Devi Ahilyabai, that she was known as. So, an exemplar even of administration, the trade and commerce that she established. Even today, if we have the Maheshwari sarees, and the weavers that she established there who are still making a living in and around Indore, that was again a great contribution. So circumventing so many challenges, and not only a civilizational renaissance that she brought about, and also economic progress, good governance for her kingdom. I thought she deserved to be called a brave heart of Bharat.
Definitely. So now that we're talking about women, Ahilya, Devi Ahilya Bai, I want to ask, like, Abakka, in now she's evoked in the Bhoot Pratha, but there were Abakkas and they were fighting. Now she's a celestial being, probably. Rudrama Devi was ruling then. Now suddenly in the history book, she's like, probably she came up as Rudra Deva. The history books now say that. So, was it the patriarchy then, or is it the patriarchy now that they don't want to recognize the women leadership? They're like, koi सच्चा नहीं हो सकती अबका. They must be a celestial being. It must not be a reality because women can't lead. So Rudra Ma Devi had to become Rudra Deva because women can't lead. So when this narration, because they did that, they were there, they were allowed to do, they were allowed to be leaders. So when this transition happened?
No, it's very difficult, Priyanka, for me. You know, these terms, patriarchy, all this is very contemporary terms, because in India there is no one size fit all definition for anything. There are, for every example, I can give counter examples. So here only, let us take some of these. So Rudrama Devi of Warangal, who you mentioned, the Kakatiya ruler, whom I detail in one of the chapters. Her father Ganpati Deva, he did not have sons. So he does what is known as the Putrika Yajna to actually anoint his daughter as the successor. But then, because there are all the time, people who would think that a woman is no good, he takes her away, teaches her warfare and all that, but the gender of the child is concealed from the rest of the kingdom. Till the time, of course, she comes of age and he can no longer conceal it. By then, she is already 12, 13, and she is, well trained in all aspects of warfare. And she and the father and daughter together rule the kingdom, jointly. So he gives her apprenticeship also with him. And then once he dies, she takes over. Of course, she has a lifelong battle, both within and without. All the neighboring rulers and also the nobility within her own kingdom constantly oppose her because they don't want a woman to be in power. And she died at the age of 80, fighting in battle against another upstart who was trying to usurp the kingdom from her. So it was a lifelong conquest for her. But still, you had an example of a father who managed to have that confidence in the daughter to invest the entire kingdom to her. This was what, 12th century. Now, almost what, 500 years later, you had Malhar Rao Holkar in Indore, who taught. I mean, he was going somewhere for a hunting expedition or something, stayed back in some village, and that's where he meets this little girl who he's very taken in by her etiquette and manners, and he asks her hand for his son, Khande Rao. And that is Ahilya Bai, and they get married. And then the father-in-law is so impressed with her, he teaches her everything, including administration, finance, accounts, and all of that. And Khande Rao is a very promiscuous man. He's given to so many other, he has 8, 9 other wives and so on. And in one of the battles, he dies, and all the other wives of his commit sati. But Malhar Rao prevails upon Ahilya Bai not to commit sati and stay by his side and help him in the administration. And even while he's fighting major battles, including the third battle of Panipat and so on, constantly there are communication that he has, which is there with the Indore, archives, with the daughter-in-law, telling her, real politics, strategy, and all of that. So you have an example of a father-in-law doing this to a daughter-in-law. You have an example of a father doing this with, the daughter. So patriarchy, I don't know, does it exist? But bias against women, certainly, because Nike Devi, whom I mentioned, she defeated Muhammad Ghori. And her son Mool Raja, who was the king, he was probably 8 or 9 years old, and like Lakshmi Bai, she ties him up to her waist and goes into battle. But even contemporary Gujarat accounts, whether it is in Jain accounts or Sanskrit accounts, how disparate. There's just one line mentioned that there was this Nike Devi, but then all the credit of that victory is attributed to the child, not to the mother. One of the texts actually say that the opponent, Ghori, he was so weak that even a woman could defeat him. So, not giving any credit to the lady for her sagacity or her courage, but had the opponent been strong, then she would have obviously been defeated. So, these kind of biases, there's no other accounts about Nike Devi, which is so sad for me to literally piece together. She was a Goan Kadamba princess from Goa, and then she was married into the Gujarat Chalukya dynasty. So, and another feature I saw, whether it was Abbakka too. So Abbakka's exploits, of defeating the Portuguese, they go all the way to the emperor of Persia, and in his court they are discussing this, that who is this lady in a distant Hind who managed to defeat the Portuguese fleet. And there's this Italian traveler called Pietro della Vel who's in that court. He hears about that and he comes to India. Among his visits, he also goes and meets Abbakka. and his account become the probably the only first hand account of who this lady was. And he, talks about her, of course, a lot of racist prejudice. He says she was so dark and plump and fat, and all my idea of European queens who were so beautiful, everything disappeared, and so on. But then, when she sees him, they can't. She saw that it was a European fair-skinned man. She had such maternal love for him. She asked one of the interpreters, "Who is this fellow? Where has he come from?" And he said, "I've come from so far." So she's supposed to have asked him, "Are you suffering from heartbreak? Which is why you're going all over the world to heal your broken heart?" So he said, "No, no, Your Majesty, I'm fine. I'm perfectly okay." He said, "You've come all alone. If you fall sick, if you are unwell, who's going to take care of you?" And then he says, "No, I trust in Jesus Christ, and He's going to take care of me," and all that. But then Pietro also goes around talking to the common people, and they tell him this lady is very cunning, and she has indulged in black magic and killed her own children, her son. So that was again a feature where even Rani Didda of Kashmir and others, whenever a woman got very powerful and by chance their children or somebody died, they would say the woman was a witch and she was indulging in black magic to kill her own children and so on. But if a king was ruling and their son died, nobody would accuse the king of doing the black magic. So there are multiple. So as I said, there is no one definition fits all, saying we were patriarchal or we were very, very egalitarian towards our women and it was only now that this has happened. There is a little bit of both. And I think our idea is to take the good parts, be a Malhar Rao Holkar or be a Ganapati Deva, rather than be those gossip mongers who said that these people indulged in black magic as witches.
But we have a long way to go, I think.
I'm going to get a lot of women claps here.
Because
That was not planned.
But that's a fact. I mean, it's still around. Things haven't changed. Women in leadership roles are very difficult to accept even now.
Correct.
So we have less time. But I want to ask you one question. What I found, there's a distinct difference between the foreign attackers and the Indian attackers. Like when they attacked each other, also they were not demolishing things, and they protected each other's property, even the intellectual properties.
Yeah.
Like, would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. In fact, the Indian code of conduct of warfare, as per the Dharma Shastras, I think that needs to be seriously looked at as to what we were doing. Lalitaditya is one such example. So when all these people went on what was their Digvijaya campaigns to become a Chakravarti Samrat and go on annexation of physical territory, just expanding your kingdom, building lavish palaces, edifices, that was of course important. But unless your kingdom had intellectual capital, the conquest was never complete. So even Lalitaditya, when he goes to all these places, he brings some of the best of scholars back to Kashmir. Bhavabhuti, Vakpati, there's Abhinav Gupta's grandfather. All these people come to Kashmir and they settle down there. And with time, Kashmir, as I said earlier, becomes the intellectual center for India. For Kashmir Shaivism, Tantra, astrology, astronomy, and Sharada, of course, goddess Sharada is the reigning goddess there. The script is also called Sharada, and no doubt, Adi Shankaracharya establishes the Sarvagnya Peeth, the all-knowing Sarvagnya Peeth of Sharada in Kashmir. So a kingdom was complete only when you had an intellectual capital to not just material acquisitions. Now there are stories of them breaking another person's say place of worship and so on, but the deity would never be desecrated. Now the idea was, if you are my opponent, whatever is valuable to you, whether it's a deity, whether it is a scholar in your court, I will take all of that back to my court and I will give it a better position of importance in my court. So I will build a 10 times grander temple for the same presiding god. I'm not going to, it's not iconoclasm which we saw with the foreign marauders who ensured that temples and structures were all broken down. It would be taken back and a grander edifice built for that. So I think that is a very fundamental difference that was there. There was also unwritten codes of conduct of war, which was like, you're not going to attack unarmed people. You're not going to attack after sunset on women, on children, on disabled, old people. You're not going to attack them. And without warning, you cannot go and do that. So even in the Mahabharata, if you see the 18 days of war, it becomes it's like a code of how you have to follow war. But then, as even Savarkar said, one of the chief reasons why India lost was we adopted or followed these ethics of war with a group of people who did not believe in those ethics. We thought we will get some certificate somewhere for our goodness. It was called by him as Sadguna Vikriti, which is what it is. You can be a Sadgun, but if your opponent doesn't subscribe to these codes, then you are going to be the loser. And that is exactly what our history showed. We may have had all these high moral principles, but we always will lose to a much lower civilization because they have no such qualms or virtues. Women can be taken away, your temples can be broken, no, you can be attacked from the back, anything can be done. So I think that is where we stretched our virtues to such an extent that we actually ended up losing everything that we had, which also becomes one of the reasons why we constantly lost, in addition to, of course, dissensions and divisions among ourselves. Even Nike Devi, when this Ghori attack comes, she writes a letter to all the kings in her vicinity, including the famous and brave Prithviraj Chauhan, and says, let us form a joint alliance. And Jayachandra, the Gahadwala ruler who was ruling out of Kashi, let us all form a northern and western alliance against the Turks and ensure that for once and for all, we can throw them away. But Prithviraj Chauhan himself doesn't. He's suspicious of her. He doesn't, this thing. He doesn't ally with Nike Devi. Now she manages to defeat him in 1178. But Prithviraj faces the music, and in 1191, in the Tarain battle, he gets defeated. Now Jayachandra, he did not support Prithviraj, but a few years later, he himself gets defeated. So this whole thing that this is not our battle till it comes to our doorstep, and we should not form strategic alliances. This was another major factor which led to our continual defeats, in addition to unilaterally subscribing to ethical codes of warfare, which we should not have. You should answer the enemy in the language that he understands.
But despite that, we are surviving, like you said. Like we did manage to pull off centuries of Indian and Bharat. So we can open the stage for questions. The questions, please make it crisp. Only questions and only on the book, please.
Hello.
Hello.
She's the moderator. I have no.
Vikram sir, first of all, welcome you to this beautiful Orange City, Nagpur. My name is Sandeep Bhuel.
Thanks.
Sir, I have two questions. Both questions are very silly questions, so pardon me. Even you can ignore. Uh, Sir, first of all, you said that there are many tools and sources available nowadays. But as a student, when I go to those sources, actually, when I was in school, I never studied history because for me that was a most boring subject. But now I realize that I should be aware about Mere Desh Ka Itihas. So, can you please suggest me which are those resources available, actual resources? So, if you can tell me, that is my first question. And second question, sir, you wrote two column on Veer Savarkar. Nowadays, about Veer Savarkar, there are many people are talking this way or that way. So I just want you to ask about those letters written by Veer Savarkar, and particularly people are saying that those were the mercy letter. So if you can highlight something on that, thank you, sir.
The moderator says.
We'll take the questions on Veer Savarkar later once we finish with the book. We can
Very
take
briefly, I'll probably just
Yeah,
address because the topic is
Yeah,
different.
they didn't get their due. Let us give it them now.
At least in this session.
Yes.
No, I mean sources. It is going to be very difficult for everybody to access the original sources, the primary sources. So, as a historian, our work, our training is to ensure how we read those sources, how we make those accessible, and bring it out to people. So rather than everybody going to read a temple inscription, you'd rather depend on someone who has decoded, deciphered that and brought to you. अब खाना हम बना के खिला रहे हैं आपको, आप क्यों जाके बाजार में सब खरीदना चाहते हैं? आप आराम से खाइए, अच्छा खाइए, पोषित खाना खाइए बस. That should be a better way to approach, I guess. And about Savarkar, I think those are, I think politically so motivated. At least in Maharashtra, I don't need to, justify that Savarkar was indeed Swatantra Veer and not the other names that he's called. These letters were something that were routine letters that were written by several political prisoners. In my 2 volumes, in the first volume, all the petitions, first of all, I don't call them mercy petitions, they are just petitions or yachika, where to get release from the jail, which the British were routinely giving every time, when the Delhi Darbar happened, when the capital shifted from Calcutta to Delhi, when the World War broke, when the First World War ended, Emperor George's proclamation, at all these milestones, like even now, when a major incident happens, a lot of convicts are given remission, they are let out to go free if their conduct is good. So like that, these people were given opportunities. Now for the government to take your case into cognizance, you have to file officially a petition which is to be there in the file. Now that cannot be called, so those petitions are there in my book. All of you can read it. It's in English book. The book has been translated into Marathi, Hindi, all languages. You can see that nowhere has he asked for mercy. He's just asking for a clarification about the status of the prisoner and also acting as a spokesperson for all the other young political prisoners who were in Kalapani, saying, release us as per the rules. So people can say whatever they want to say for politics, and in the run up to the elections, bitterly fought elections now, I'm sure it will get worse. Though I think some people have been asked to zip it after their last yatra that was going on from north to south, not to talk about Savarkar in that manner. So hopefully better sense will prevail.
So
Yeah.
my
So, and to answer his, I would like to ask that the
Moderator is not
FIHC.
allowed to ask another question.
No, just to so that his question is also answered, and probably everybody comes to know that the FIHCR that you have started, like the founded, what work and is the work access of is for us, for the common
Oh, of
people?
course, yeah. So I think that's thank you. So a couple of months back, I just made this announcement of a foundation for Indian historical and cultural research that would be that I'm going to start, and in a couple of months we'll start working in full steam. Now the idea there was that to go back to the primary sources. Now, as I said, you can be a very celebrated historian of ancient India, and I'm not taking names here. All of you know who I'm talking about, who will proclaim that I don't know any Sanskrit. You can be a medieval historian whom you doesn't know a single word of Arabic or Persian. Now, me as a modern historian today, to learn Sanskrit or Persian, Arabic, and all the other languages, it will take me probably a couple of lifetimes. So instead, can we form small multidisciplinary groups of a historian working with a Sanskrit Pandit, a Prakrit scholar, an archaeologist, a geologist, who all operate in silos. They never come together and pool in their resources, their knowledge, and their scholarship, and address and decode certain important historical themes which are of contemporary relevance. And we plan to incubate these projects in educational institutions, universities, and a first pilot project which we have already at least started the framework is on assessing this whole story of supposed Hindu-Buddhist conflict. Every time we talk of Islamic iconoclasm, the Marxist historians turn back and say Hindus also destroyed Buddhist structures. First of all, they say there's no term called Hindu till the British came to the country till the 19th century. Then how can you say all Hindus demolished Buddhist stupas? Were they individual people, Pushyamitra Shunga and some other people, or was it a theological sanction as it was in the case of the Semitic faiths? So for that you'll need to go to the original sources which are in Prakrit, which none of us know how to read. Tibetan, a lot of Tibetan texts are there on the Buddhism of that time. So we formed a small group of a historian with a Sanskrit scholar. Now Sanskrit Pandits also, they use all their Sanskrit knowledge only for puja path and karma kandas and havans and this and that, or to philosophy, which is our plus point, but never to historical research. So can we get them to read our historical texts as it is, and not rely on Max Muller and all these other people who have translated our texts? So all of them forming a group, and we'll probably have a series of books which we're planning on the journey of Buddhism in India, its rise and fall, its reasons, and dispassionately, whatever it says. If it does say that the Hindus had some insidious agenda to demolish what they did, so be it. That is the fact of history. You can't change. If it is itihasa and it does happened, it does happened. I have no right or power to change what already happened. But at least putting it as it is, without this whitewash business that currently happens, especially when it comes to Marxist historiography, I think that needs to stop.
Because my question is, what needs to be done in your opinion to include these brave hearts of Bharat into modern history textbooks so that it would reach a wider audience?
Thank you. That's a great question asked to the wrong person, because I don't belong either to the government or have any inroads there. Uh, Unfortunately, I think the best way for it to reach out to the maximum people is through textbooks. I'm not sure. I mean, all of us, how much do we remember of the history we read? So maybe it's okay. But today, I think with information, a lot of you in this room, especially the young people, I think their sources of information is not the textbook they read in school, but maybe an Instagram reel. So in 1 minute, are you able to tell the story of Lalitaditya in a manner that is so exciting that it will maintain a permanent impression in their minds? 300 pages may be too much for some young person today to read. So I'm doing the hard work of doing again, I'm coming back to cooking analogy. I'm doing the cooking, and the cook is always sweating in the kitchen and making the dish. Now presenting it, किस तरह से उसको परोसना है, that can be done in numerous ways. There can be OTT, I mean, with the explosion of information, I don't know, OTT platforms, series that can be done. Why are our period dramas so bad? In India, it has to be a song and dance which is so nonsensical. I mean, in that Baji Rao Mastani, all that we saw was Baji Rao was a hopeless romantic. We didn't never saw that he was one of the bravest warriors who expanded the Maratha Empire. So when in contrast, when you see on Netflix The Crown or some of these other historicals, which is done with so much of attention to every detail, to the costume, to the the every period detail. I wish more people use some of these books and ensure that it goes to a wider audience. The textbooks is just one this thing which the government will wake up someday. 10 years they haven't done anything on that, but that also there again, I think unless we the people make it an important agenda for the government, and particularly 3 months before an election, I mean, today reaching your voice out to the people in power, either through social media or other things, is very easy. You can tag the Prime Minister of the country and let your angst known. If there's a petition.org and everybody signs a petition, and there are some 10 crore people of India who say, we demand that the history of this country, the way it is written, is changed so that our children, this is not your BJP, Congress, left fight. It goes beyond that. It is something that is so important for us. This is what my child or his child, my grandchildren and future generations are going to read. And I don't want it to be hostage to your petty politics and ideology. We demand that as one of the important agenda items in your manifesto, and you better do it, otherwise you will lose my vote. There is no government or party that worth its salt which will not take that into cognizance. Now they also have numerous other priorities. I think economy, military, foreign affairs, and all that. And that history comes last priority for most people. And so that is why I think this gets a short shift. So a people's movement, so to say, to actually have this reach the voices in power. So that's the only way I would say it to go.
So it's upon us now.
Hello, sir. Sir, earlier it was believed that the women are discriminated. So when a lady ruled the kingdom, so did it make any change to the thought process of the people?
So that's what, as I mentioned, there were some cases where it did, but in a lot of other cases, it also evoked constant envy. They always made the life of the woman very difficult. It was not as much of an easy, smooth sail as if she had been a man. So all the women who have been featured in this book too, if you read their stories, they came up and held their power with a lot of effort. So that makes their story all the more, powerful, because not only did they have to be a brave heart to face external aggression, they also had to face a lot of internal dissent because people thought that she was not good enough. I mean, why go so far into the past? Even when an Indira Gandhi became a prime minister, we had people who said she is no good, she's a gungi gudiya, and all of that. Till later, a complete thing saying she's the only man in the cabinet, and all the others were just kowtowing to her. So it is very difficult. I think people don't take it. And Priyanka, as she said, even in leadership roles, it's not only power, but even in a corporate setup, even in to even listen to a woman boss, I don't know how many people would take it very lightly. So it's a more difficult task for the woman leader to actually prove her mettle and also ensure that the subordinates are in, listen to her. So it does take time to change that mindset. But in the past, as you see in these stories, there have been varied responses to that from the people around these queens.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
My name is Prasad. I am a data engineer and I am pursuing finance. My question is that regardless of my educational credentials, I am extremely passionate about history and I have read many books. Like I've read both the Savarkars and books by GSD, and I'm reading this one currently. So my question is that for people like me who cannot get involved into primary research, how can we contribute to the Indic wing of history? And my other question is, you see there is a rise of AI. So do you see any convergence between history and AI in future, and how it will impact it?
That's a good question. On the first part, like I mentioned earlier, each of you may have expertise in various fields. Someone who's good at social media, at making these videos, making podcasts. I think podcasts and the online media are a far more far-reaching, tool these days to get the information across. So everyone need not actually sit and start writing books and so on. So some of us are doing that task to get that information across to the nook and cranny of the country. That can be done through various means where each of you, whatever expertise you may have, that can be brought to the fore. The second question on the AI is very interesting, and I'm currently actually the foundation which I spoke of. We are also working very closely with Mr. Bhavesh Agarwal, who's just come out with this Kritrim, which is, I think, just yesterday there was a news article that Kritrim becomes India's first ChatGPT AI tool, which also became a unicorn, India's first AI unicorn. And he's very, very keen to explore how this can be used, particularly to decode some of our texts. We need, I mean, if you go to the National Manuscript Mission or Namami that is there are millions, I don't know the exact number, in millions there are manuscripts in various forms, which remain locked up in shelves in Delhi with nobody, taking care of that. Now, these all need to be digitized, these need to be translated, and they need to be made into more useful format for people, for scholars, historians, and for common people to use. So there, AI cannot do the entire job because there'll be so many. First of all, you have to build the backend model as to how Sanskrit or all of these classical languages need to be done. So there's a lot of hard work which needs to be put. But maybe the first draft of a translation or this thing of a digitization, but you shouldn't rely completely on the ChatGPT AI tools because it's a humanities thing. It's not just data science. It needs to have a human intervention to see and cross check if the translations are correct, if the way things have been done are correct. But at least maybe the one first draft, 50% of the job is probably made simpler with technology. But that's an experiment that is, as we speak, as I said, we are trying to explore precisely that to see how these texts there can be used with modern technology. And in the West, they do that very routinely. Even once they build a backend which is very robust, if a particular manuscript is torn or damaged, it will kind of reconstruct or try to guess what the rest of the text is. Here, most of our palm leaf manuscripts are moth eaten or something else has happened. So one can guess and see what the damaged portions are and maybe glean some information from that. So in numerous ways, I think we can use technology to our advantage.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. And let's have a huge round of applause, everybody. So I think I'm very happy as the anchor of this room that the room is filled. So thank you so much for having so many wonderful discussions with our dear readers here. So without further ado, I think we're short on time, and the next is a workshop, which is a writing workshop. And I'm sure most of you want to be writers yourself. So please do attend. And Boria Majumdar will be 1 hour from now. It's been extended due to unfortunate delays in air travel. So I would request our founder chairman, Mr. Hemant Lodaji, to present a memento, and this is uniquely photographed monuments of Nagpur, and we really want to highlight the beauty of Nagpur. So may I request you, please? And also presenting a small token of love to our moderator for a wonderful job done as well.
Just one line I would like to say. A few days back I heard one line that unless lion start writing, hunter will keep writing the story. So if you all think that the lion को लिखना आ गया है, तो आप please standing ovation दीजिए.
Wow.
Amazing, sir. Amazing.
With that, everybody, thank you for joining us. Please do stay for the writing workshop.